Bryce Laspiza was born on April 30, 1994. He was the son of Michael and Karen Laspiza. The family lived in a quiet western suburb of Chicago, Illinois. An only child, Bryce grew up happy and loved by his family. He was an athletic, intelligent young man who loved life. Growing up, his life was smooth. He had emotional stability, practiced support, and his family structure was almost perfect. In 2012, when Bryce graduated from Naperville High School, he intended to move to Chico, California, to study graphic and industrial design at the prestigious Sierra College. Wanting to be closer to their son, Michael and Karen decided to move to Laguna Niguel, a city also in the state of California. It was something they believed would be good for the whole family. Michael and Karen would have peace of mind knowing that Bryce was only a few hours' drive away, while he could get a taste of living independently of his parents. His freshman year at college was uneventful. He spent the holidays at the end of that period at his parents' house. All summer, Bryce talked about how excited he was to go back to college, share a room with his best friend, Sean Dixon, and see his girlfriend, Kim Sly, who he met at university. As the beginning of the semester approached, he seemed happy to be returning to college life. On Monday, August 26, 2013, the semester began and the campus slowly came back to life. That night, Bryce and his mother spoke briefly. Karen was pleased to know that her son had become independent and had a bright future ahead of him. But the next day, things took an unexpected turn. Bryce started acting very strange. His girlfriend, Kim, couldn't quite figure out what was going on with him. But Bryce didn't look normal. He looked distant and had a worried look on his face. She also noticed that he seemed to be getting rid of some of his belongings. For example, he gave his roommate Sean, who loved video games, his Xbox. He also gave his classmates his favorite pair of sneakers, shirts, and even his backpack. Kim got to see the young man giving a pair of diamond earrings his mother recently gave him to a girl he barely knew. Kim then decided to ask what was going on, but Bryce didn't say anything and ignored her. Later that night, Bryce ended his relationship with Kim via text, with no explanation except for a cryptic phrase, "You'll be better off without me." Kim goes to Sean, thinking the roommate might have some clue as to what was going on. They talked and concluded that Bryce's behavior was becoming increasingly incoherent and decided to call his mother. The next day, Sean made the call. He told Karen that her son was acting strange and provided some new information. According to Sean, Bryce had been drinking heavily in the previous 2 weeks and had taken an ADHD medication called Vyvanse, an amphetamine stimulant to help him stay awake during video game marathons that lasted all night. ADHD is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. He then said that Bryce mentioned something was bothering him lately, but didn't say what it was. At first, Karen wasn't too alarmed. She knew Bryce would get in trouble. After all, he was just a 19-year-old boy who had lived with his parents all his life. Later that night, she receives a call from Bryce himself. Despite breaking up with Kim the night before, Bryce drove to her house 90 miles away and called his mother. At this point, Kim picks up the phone to emphasize to Karen that Bryce isn't acting right. She takes the car keys and then Bryce picks up the phone and admits he has something he needs to discuss with his mother. Karen offers to take a trip to visit her son to set things right, but Bryce declines. He tells her that he just wants to go back to his apartment and get some rest, and that he would call her later. Kim picks up the phone again and warns Bryce's mother that she feels it's not safe for him to drive. But Karen tells Kim to return the car keys and tells him to call back as soon as he gets home, which Bryce agrees to. At 11:30 p.m., he leaves Kim's house. The next morning, Karen wakes up and notices a missed call from her son around 1 a.m. She doesn't call back right away, as she thinks Bryce had just called her to let her know he got home. The next day, August 30, 2013, Karen and Michael think everything is fine with their son, until they get another call from him at 11 a.m. This time, he left a voicemail. Bryce tells his parents that at 9 a.m., he had to use the car insurance helpline to fill up his gas tank east of Bakersfield, 563 kilometers from the college. Their credit card records show that he spent $20 on fuel at a gas station called Castro Tire and Gas. Given the station's location and its proximity to home, Karen and Michael assumed their son is heading to meet them. But 3 hours passed and they hadn't heard from Bryce. The young man's parents tried to contact him, but all calls went to voicemail. Restless, Karen decides to call the gas station. Christian, a local employee, answers and agrees to check that Bryce's vehicle is still near the station. The man gets out and spots the car. Getting closer, he sees that Bryce is inside. When Christian asked what he was doing, Bryce nervously responded, "Nothing." Christian notes that his eyes are a little red, but he seems to be fine. At this point, Bryce had been awake for at least 24 hours straight. At noon, Bryce finally answers his mother's call and says he's on his way home. Relieved, Karen hopes her son arrives safely. A few hours pass and again Bryce gives no sign. By now, the boy should have arrived home. Only at 6:30 p.m., after many unsuccessful attempts to call their son, Karen and Michael use his cell phone's GPS to try to track his location. They are stunned when they discover that Bryce has only driven 8 miles from the gas station and is stranded in the town of Buttonwillow. At 9 p.m., Karen calls the California Highway Patrol and asks them to check for her son's car. The police searched the area where Bryce was driving. They found him sitting inside the vehicle, still in the same spot. The officers talk to him for about 20 minutes, take a test to see if he was drunk, and look for drugs in the vehicle. Bryce passes the tests and the cops don't find any drugs in the car either. For unknown reasons, when one of the officers asked Bryce to call his mother, he refused and said everything was fine. The officer then picked up the phone, called Bryce's mother, and held the phone on speaker for him to speak. Bryce, somewhat reluctantly, told his mother he was going to visit some friends and then would go home. As he was not intoxicated, the officers had no choice but to release him. At 11 p.m., credit cards records showed that Bryce stopped at a gas station in Buttonwillow and bought a drink. He later called his mother and said he was coming home. At dawn, on the 30th and 31st of August 2013, Bryce pulls up again at a gas station and puts $39 on gas and turns on the GPS, which indicates he should get back on the interstate to make sure he's heading the right direction. According to his GPS, Bryce was supposed to be home at 3:25 a.m. Karen gets another call from her son at 1:50 a.m. He said he got off the interstate but decided to get back on track. Confused but believing he's coming home, Karen hangs up. 18 minutes later, at 2:08 a.m., Bryce calls Karen again, but this time tells her he's got off the interstate again, so he's going to pull over and try to get some sleep in the car. Knowing that Bryce has been awake for nearly 48 hours, Karen agrees. But unlike what he told his mother, Bryce didn't stop and drove another hour and a half to Lake Estake. At 5:30 a.m., the California State Patrol locates an overturned vehicle on a small lakeside road, a beige 2003 Toyota Highlander. The rear window was shattered, and blood was found on the headrest in the driver's seat and in the back seat. The car was 2 hours from Bryce's house. The vehicle had likely hit and overturned. After an initial investigation of the vehicle, officers discovered that it belonged to Michael and Karen Laspisa. Inside the car were Bryce's wallet, laptop, and cell phone. In the trunk was an open black backpack. At 8 a.m., Michael and Karen are informed of the discovery, and in a panic ask for their son, but the officer said they didn't find anyone in the car and around. The search for Bryce begins. Security camera footage on the highway captured Bryce making 2 trips to the area where his vehicle was found. At 2:15 a.m., Bryce took an exit to Lake Estake, then returned again at 4:29. It is estimated that the accident occurred between 4:30 and 5:15 that morning. Upon further inspection, investigators determined that whoever was driving the vehicle didn't brake before the crash. Tire tracks in the region showed the car was speeding before descending a ravine for about 10 meters towards the lake. Police officers searched the area for weeks. During the search, officers responded to a nearby fire call and discovered the flaming body of Lemondra Miles, a 35-year-old man who was shot and set on fire by a gang. Some people assume that Bryce may have had the same fate. Sniffer dogs were brought to the scene and tried to track Bryce, They followed the scent to a truck stop near Castaic Road, where the trio disappeared. It raised suspicions that the boy got into a vehicle with someone, taking an unknown direction. Sheriff's Office County searched for 3 weeks after Bryce disappeared. After that, the family hired a private investigator named Shannon Toulouse. He surmised that given Bryce's excellent physical condition, he probably didn't sustain serious injuries, grabbed some belongings from the black backpack found in the trunk, went to the truck stop, and hitchhiked with someone, probably to start a new life, away from the problems plaguing his mind. Obviously, the boy's family rejected this theory. It made no sense for him to run away. Despite this, no further information has emerged regarding Bryce's mysterious disappearance since then. On the internet, there are many theories surrounding this case, but nothing leads to any plausible information. However, many believe that given the fact that he voluntarily donated his belongings before his disappearance, Bryce could have taken his own life. This would explain the speed with which the car left the embankment towards Lake Castaic. His erratic behavior, driving aimlessly, unwillingness to talk to his family, and the cryptic message sent to Cam may indicate his restlessness and indecision regarding his life. For many, he just wanted to get away from it all. Another theory is a mental illness or psychotic break. It's undeniable that Bryce was confused or dealing with something on his mind as he tried to get home. It took the Castaic Lake exit twice and took over 3 hours to walk a few kilometers. The last theory comes up is that Bryce was involved in dangerous things. He mentioned to his roommate Sean that something was bothering him. But what? He told his mother he needed to talk to her about something. And what would that be? Was Bryce running from someone? If yes, who? And why? If Bryce survived the car accident, where did he go? And if he didn't, what happened to his body? A search was carried out on the lake for 2 days in a row with professional divers, but nothing was found. Finally, Bryce's parents didn't give up on hope of finding their son. They think that after the accident, the young man may have entered a state of mental confusion, got into someone's car and drove away, totally forgetting who he was. The young man's family created a page on social networks to share information that could lead to his whereabouts. Unfortunately, to this day, no response regarding Bryce's whereabouts has brought any answer to his family, but they continue to believe that one day they will find him, despite the case being closed as inconclusive. Well folks, that's it. Thank you so much for watching until the end. Best wishes, and I see you next time.